Today, we're going to dive into applied AI to very practical, very specific use cases that we have in patient journey. And we have two amazing speakers joining me in a moment. Agnieszka Billewicz is our head of design team, an award-winning designer who is very keen on creating special experiences, ranging from health tech to automotive, everything with an empathy, with user centricity that you want in your product. And we have Martin Fix, who is also our co-lead of our AI Innovation Hub and a technical director at STAR, with a background of 20 plus years in data science, R&D, delivering projects of various complexity. And welcome. Say hi to our audience, and off to you.
Hello, nice to meet you, and we're extremely excited to be speaking with you today. We'll take around 30-40 minutes for the presentation itself, and the later part is going to be a Q&A. So you are welcome to drop up questions for us in the chat, and we will handle them at the end. So,
yeah. Hello, also from my side, it's a great pleasure to be on stage together with this magnificent presenter, Agnieszka. Looking forward to provide you some enjoyable time and hopefully to be able to answer a couple of your questions to initiate an interesting discussion about the topic of AI and healthcare.
Great, let's start. Let's talk about AI, but not the far, far future and grand vision, but a bit more AI here and now. Because in a sea of buzzword content that we see all around us, I specifically get very excited when I can find concrete data about the impact our design decisions make on the patient journey and the cost of care. So this is what we want to share with you today, a couple of data points to understand, because often with the fast pace of technology and the innovators working behind the closed doors, it's really hard to get to actual data that can support decision making. So here we are today, and we all know that AI is applied very widely across a variety of applications, from simple ones like administrative task automations to very complex ones like clinical decision support or preventative care. That's why today we will only look at a couple of those use cases that we find as good examples. We are by no means going to be able to look at all of the possible use cases, but still we think it's really actually interesting to look at a couple of use cases at a low level, because we all know that at a high level, AI has a capacity to really transform the care delivery. And at a high level, the savings that are predicted by a wider adoption of AI in healthcare are predicted to be between 5 and 10%, which means hundreds of billions of dollars in a scale of, for example, USA. And even if we look at more conservative predictions that predict between 4.5% to 8% of savings, and only at key areas where the AI applications can be most impactful, like care delivery or public health or capacity management, we still get thousands of billions of savings on the scale of a country. So we know this is massive amount of money and massive impact, but we really want to understand better how do we get there and how does it spread across those single specific use cases and the impact they bring. So today we want to accompany a patient on a simplified patient journey all the way from scheduling to follow-up to understand how AI is already transforming this journey. And during this specific webinar, we will only touch up on 4 or 5 of those moments. But after the webinar, you will receive from us a full report that will have all of those moments in the journey, and will also include more insights and more data that we can cover within 30 minutes. So also stay tuned for that. But without further ado, let's start our story. And our story starts at home where Sarah experiences her first symptoms. So she starts feeling ill, knows that something is wrong, and like many other patients, decides to check for symptoms on her own. And this is a very emotional moment. As you all know, things can easily escalate from a simple rash to self-diagnosed stage 4 cancer. So it's a very important moment in the journey. And in the past, a lot of patients tended to use a simple web search. But nowadays, more and more peak AI-enabled products. And sometimes those are very first moments in the journey where patients encounter AI-based applications like symptom checker apps. For example, ADA is one of the most well-known in the markets, but also chatbots, voice assistants, or disease management app that have features that are powered by AI. And we will probably see more and more of those in the future, where even, for example, at-home diagnostic medical devices like a simple thermometer will have companion apps that are able to provide you more information based on historical trends and more predictions based on those. Martin, can you tell us more about the implementation of those kind of solutions from a technical perspective and the AI impact on the journey that they bring?
Yeah, sure. I think you mentioned one of the most important topics already. Sorry, which is the fact that these companion apps compete against Google, right? So what every person does is Googling, I have the following symptoms. And then when you look at it, you basically learn you're practically dead. And it's just, you're just lucky that you have a couple of minutes left to close your search. Now, these apps itself, technically speaking, there's not too much to say about. It's a smartphone app, it's a desktop app, a web app, runs on multiple platforms. Like any app you have been seen before, using standard technologies. There's a bit of AI plugged in, which helps you to have a more guidance on giving qualified questions about your symptoms, which I think is the main benefit. You're not just looking for something, but you have an interaction. However, there's one catch you need to be aware of when looking from the technology perspective. Even though all data can be treated anonymously, you might end up building something which is called a medical device, or in European terms, a high-risk AI application, which falls under regulation. And why is that? Because depending on how you build it, it could give you an advice on your health. Do this. Do not do that, or you have this kind of potential disease, which is a medical advice, which is a high risk because it can impact your health, right? If the app would tell you something to do and it's wrong and you got killed or injured, then you have a problem. And this is the reason why this could be treated as a medical device class 2A for the ones who know all the details. Nothing to be too scared of. You can build these and you can certify this and regulate this, and we are happy and to help, and we have done this in the past. But it might be in an unpredicted turn of events for companies thinking of building these kind of apps. So that's important why you need to know this upfront.
And actually, I think with us, we have today Antonina, who's our head of regulatory consulting. So if you have questions that are also containing kind of regulatory aspect of both medical devices and generally regulatory aspects about AI specifically, you can always ask them in the chat and she will be answering questions in there as well. In the meantime, let's look at the impact on the time and cost of care that those kind of solutions bring. And I think what's interesting is that integrated digital symptom checkers can really save time of the doctors. Typically, in studies, they show that they affect every second or consultation, being able to save the time. And even if they save just 1 minute per consultation, that adds up to 5 or 10 minutes daily per doctor. And those are actually very conservative numbers, because in many studies, we see estimations that digital symptom checkers that are integrated are able to save between 2.5 to even 5 minutes per consultation. And that would add up to even an hour per doctor, of course, depending, but counting an average amount of patients in the US. So it's a significant amount of time. And it's amount of time that can be saved not only for the doctor, but for the patient as well. So in the studies, we see that, for example, having a digital symptom checker that is present in an ER can reduce significantly patients' waiting time for the triage nurse for above 50%, also around 10, 15, even 20 minutes shorter wait time in this case. But what I actually find most interesting is that digital symptom checkers can affect the consultation time, even if those are not integrated, even if the doctor cannot see all the data that the patient inputted into the digital symptom checker. Just the fact that the patient used it means that they are better at describing symptoms. They can understand better what kind of information is important, and therefore the consultation can be shorter and more precise. So that's a very interesting aspect that they can actually affect, even if they don't have direct contact with the doctor. But for now, let's come back and check in with Sarah, who now is a bit calmed down and knows what kind of specialists she should visit. And even though it's late at night, because her healthcare center is integrated with VoiceOg, which is an example of an AI-powered voice and text assistant, she's able to schedule an appointment without problem, just using her phone without any dedicated application. In this case, AI can really cut down the workload of the staff and reduce the support costs needed for scheduling, but also shorten the wait time. What's interesting that the patient often assume that the wait time that they get is basically the most optimal one, and that's the fastest that doctor can see them. But in reality, often before using an AI enablement, we just get a little bit of random appointment time versus AI has an ability to make that kind of shorter just because of the better optimization, better management of those appointments. And we are already used to a lot of those scheduling automations. So again, Martin, I would like to ask you what kind of, from a technical perspective, what kind of advancements we have seen in the last few years?
Yeah, I think you mentioned it already. The key thing here is the ease of access. We have seen booking systems for quite a while, right? Web pages where you can say, I want a preferred time slot, or the physician or clinic provides you with available time slots. And then you start looking through the page, and then you start opening a seconding window where you look at your own calendar and see if there's a match. And then you somehow try to find the slot. Also, these slots mostly are generic. Some of them are pre-qualified what you need, a consultation or just a second opinion or whatever. The twist with this AI comes now. First, it makes it much easier to use because it's voice-based, right? You say, I need an appointment with a doctor or with this clinic, please make me one. And if it's a clever made app, it might be even connect to a personal schedule and finds the matching slot automatically. I think this is the main benefit. It's a generic pattern of AI, actually, to make the use of systems easier. Even if the app looks straightforward, technically it's a bit more challenging than the previous one, because in reality, you would have to connect to the individual booking systems of the clinics or the physicians or the PhD, the GPs, or basically the places where you want to go. And as there's a heterogeneous mix of different systems used and different kind of configuration, etc., this is more a software integration challenge rather than getting the AI on top of it. So it's a bit more classical engineering work. And last but not least, you need to keep in mind that we're also talking about personal data, at least name, maybe date of birth, etc. So some data privacy and security needs to be kept in mind here as well. But as I said before, the main twist is here that it's getting easier and more intuitive to get this arranged so that you don't have to click and watch and synchronize yourself, but this is what the agent does for you.
Mm-hmm. So even though those solutions are a bit more technologically complex than the previous example that we've seen, they actually have quite an impressive ROI on a lot of products that we've seen. So for example, you can achieve up to 7 or even 10 times return on investment on those kind of AI enabled scheduling applications, which I think is quite impressive. I also am very curious about what you think. So in the chat, you can also write what kind of ROI you would expect for a scheduling automation like this, and what would you consider a successful or a good one, an interesting one. In the meantime, we will go further and we will go and catch up with Sarah, who is now preparing for the appointment. So she's basically gathering all the necessary documents, insurance information, medical history, and AI also, again, comes very handy in those kind of situations. Because while the reminders for the appointment have been, again, with us for quite some time, they have evolved into more full-fledged assistants. And those assistants can guide patients through their journey, both pre and post the consultation. So the communication that comes with a reminder is more personalized, more empathetic, often easier to understand. So typically a lot of those medical kind of grade assistants provide information in a very clear and instructable way. And also if they provide kind of medical information, it shows within kind of grade 11 understanding, which means every kind of kid within grade 11 would be able to understand, whereas kind of human contact doesn't always have this this level of simplicity. And with further AI enhancements, we can go as level as grade 7. It also enables patients for new options, like, for example, asking up follow-up questions. This prediction, this personalization is improving the patient preparation and therefore increasing their activation. But I think one of the most interesting aspects of how AI is impacting the appointment and scheduling the preparation for the appointment is that it's proven to be able to very significantly reduce no-shows. So prediction algorithms can predict patients who are likely to miss an appointment based on a variety of data like weather, traffic, time, and allow them to rebook their appointment. So Martin, those prediction algorithms to optimize the scheduling, of course, they need tons of data. Can you give us a bit more of a data science perspective on this kind of use case?
Yes, absolutely. So as you mentioned, if you have been able to observe behavior of patients or potential patients for a while, you will be able to detect patterns. Like you said, weather condition is one, but also place of living is another one, right? If you're living quite remote from where you need to go, there's no public transit connection eventually, or it's pretty hard to get there, no-shows seem to be more likely. Age is of importance. So you can combine this all into a prediction model and then try to deal with it. I think another key aspect of this AI assistance here is that if you have some information you want to provide or you need to provide to your healthcare provider before the treatment or the examination, AI can even check the validity of the documents, right? So if it says, please provide your latest medical report, and you give them the invoice of your last Amazon shopping, traditional systems will not recognize this. They will see just a document. Okay, I store the document as a patient record. AI could actually prove if it's related. All of this, of course, requires a deep connection into the actual backend systems the healthcare providers are using. They need to be open and willing to open their data, to make it accessible to the system in order to provide these benefits. And allow me just a quick remark. the solution for the patient works best if we would combine the previous 2 steps as well, because they give additional context. So the symptom checker has already a lot of answers of what I have or what I don't have. Then the scheduling provides me information where I'm going, and the place I'm going can provide information what is typically needed for this kind of appointment. So if I put this all together, AI then is most powerful. Now, for this particular use case, the requirements for security get even higher, because we're now talking about medical data, maybe medical reports, any kind of imagery, X-rays, MRI, CT scans, whatever. So from the technology perspective, we need to have a very careful look at cybersecurity, data privacy, and data protection, following several regulations again. And as I mentioned before, nothing to be too scared of. You just need to tick all the boxes to make sure you're not missing anything. Because the worst thing you want is that your AI goes rogue with data and publishes it somewhere where people don't want to see it.
Great, then let's look at the thing that I am very eager to see, so the impact. I think it's interesting. When we looked at some studies from pilots that were conducted at NHS, we found that they were able to achieve 30% of reduction in non-attendances. So 30% of total do not shows were prevented. And again, I think it's quite a significant number, but it actually can go higher if we think about very specific cases. So some clinics might have a specific, for example, underserved population groups that they want to counter, or maybe there's a reduction of a certain problematic area, like, for example, appointments on Monday. When it comes to appointments on Monday, you are able to kind of reduce the no-show rate even up to 80%. So significantly higher when we exactly know what's the problem kind of causing the people to do not show so often. Now it's time for SaaS consultation. Typically, patients in the consultations and examinations might have situations at least once in their life when it was really hard for them to follow the recommendations from and the information provided by the doctor. They were too nervous, stressed about what they might hear. Maybe they was overwhelmed with the amount of information. Very often doctors also seem to be in a rush and don't really have time to explain much. So a lot of the opportunity areas that we see within consultation and examination revolves around enhancing the communication between patient and the doctor. And there's a significant way for improvements there. We do think it starts with doctors simply having more time, and this is already happening. So in studies, we see that AI enablement introduced within, for example, a clinic can free up the doctors to spend more time with patients, and this time rises from, for example, 50% all the way to 67%. So almost 20% of time more can be dedicated to patients. But this issue of communication is actually not only the issue of doctors having enough time, but also the right attitude and communication skills. So that's also a very interesting aspect of what AI brings to the table when it comes to patient experience, because there's this phenomena that we called artificial empathy, which actually shows us that patients often prefer responses, communication, for example, diagnostic response that is generated rather than the one that is coming from physician, because they rate the generated response, for example, a response from ChatGPT, as more empathetic and better in quality, even by as much as 40% more empathetic. So we still, of course, need the physicians, but we see a lot of opportunity for tools that can enhance the communication, personalize it, make it easier to understand, and make it more, infuse it with the right grade of empathy and the personalized approach. And the impact of AI on this step of the journey is quite significant, from all the support on the diagnosis and understanding the diagnostic results, all the way to speeding up the tests, removing the burden, and aiding the patients in understanding and reducing the times. But we have quite a lot of those solutions. So again, I will turn to you, Martin. What do we have to remember about when we think about implementing solutions around consultation and examination?
Yeah, I think one of the most prominent challenges here is safeguarding the AI. So to only come up with output to the patient which is helpful and, as you mentioned, empathetic. So it should not hallucinate or provide any weird kind of stuff. The quality of interaction gets better the more it's individualized, meaning the AI would need access to the holistic integration of healthcare provider data, so medical records, treatment plans, etc., which in itself then again poses the need for very strong cybersecurity control to protect all the data. This even could be a high-risk AI, actually, again, because it could give treatment advice or additional diagnosis. It depends on how you play it, whether the AI talks directly to the patient or a physician or doctor is in between. But we're definitely touching this area of high risk in some cases. And then the final aspect is also that the AI could help the patient to proper understand his whole patient journey. Also in like very simple things like the entry to your clinic is on this street here. Then you go straight ahead, left corridor, knock on the red door, and here you will have the waiting room. It sounds very simple, but this is even where patients struggle sometimes, and which is a time saver and makes you more comforted, more taken care of. Again, this requires some technical integration, which is quote unquote homework you just have to do. Integration with healthcare backend systems is totally solvable. There's a couple of standards which have been established and are widely used, which we could tap into and then make it happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think it's very interesting what you're saying, and very important, especially from the perspective of designer, about this connection of those steps and kind of taking all of those moments and giving one guided kind of experience to the patient, because it's then falling, kind of the pieces fall into place as a kind of seamless journey, and no one moment can really truly transform, and not one product and one feature will truly transform the patient experience, but it's rather that this accumulation of tens and thousands of small tweaks that we can do. Well, if we look at the impact and the cost savings, it's very interesting, because even though, as we see from predictions, medical cost savings typically are predicted to be much smaller than administrative cost savings. For example, they are predicted to be between 5 to 11%, and the administrative cost savings 30 to 25. So roughly half of those. There's still areas within consultation and examination that are highly impactful when it comes to AI enablement. So, for example, for medical cost savings for long courses of rare diseases that occur before the diagnosis, we're able to achieve 30 to 49, almost 50% of costs saved due to use of diagnostic support systems that experts can use to support their knowledge, just because of the amount of rare diseases and information you need to have to properly diagnose them. So it's important that we look for those specific areas that can truly kind of embrace the impact of AI. And they are both on the level of consultation and also often, I think, on the level of examination, and different kind of tests and medical exams that patients go through. For example, especially, I think, good field when it comes to showing the impact of AI, both from patient perspective and kind of from a provider perspective, is medical imaging. So products like Tempus Pixel, for example, are able to reduce the scan time by 30% by the advanced viewing and automated reporting of the cardiac MR images. And
Agnieszka, let maybe just add one more thing you just mentioned, because it's an interesting trend. The high improvement of treating rare diseases, this 50%, is related to the fact that you could think of AI actually as a library of everything which has ever recorded in the world, accessible at your fingertips. And this is what makes detecting these things easier, because if you use a proper trained AI, it could have basically a vast amount of this knowledge available, which is very quickly accessible. This would be looking a little bit on the other side, not on the patient journey necessarily, but also on the doctor's life. But again, if you combine this, if you have the symptom checker, and then a personalized AI would be able to tell the doctor what has all been already recorded and all been noted and all the information available, and then say, with the given information, I see a correlation to this kind of potential disease. Because what happens in reality is, for a poor patient having something uncommon, you run from specialist to specialist until you find someone who eventually remembers there was a disease reported somewhere in a book, and makes a correlation. I think it's not this engine anymore. There are even retrieval systems which are digital, etc. But AI can open this door quite a bit more.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think every time we speak of transforming the patient journey, we're really also transforming the HCP journey, and they kind of go hand in hand. So even when we had this example of MRI images, for example, and the reduction of scan time due to kind of automation and advancement that is really kind of aiming at technician or HCP, depending on the situation and the level, we also can have similar impact simply by having patient-centric interventions. Yeah, so in the case of MRI, patients are often very scared of the procedure itself, especially children, and the different AI-enabled interventions, like, for example, assistance guiding the patient throughout the procedure, can really reduce the time of the exam because of providing additional instructions. And this reduction of time is not only leading to simple kind of cost savings, but also can enable the technicians to kind of decrease the mental load that they have. And in the future, we can expect them to be able to run several exams at a time. So we're basically making the entire infrastructure more scalable through interventions that are at the core patient-centric, but they impact on the HCP technicians and kind of the infrastructure of the hospital at large. And let's look at the next moment in our journey. So Sarah starting the treatment. And as Sarah starts the treatment, there will be many touch points where she might encounter entire products or more often features that are AI enabled. Like, for example, educational materials that are generated by Gen AI within her patient advocacy group, or an algorithm that is able to personalize the recommendations within her, for example, disease management app by looking at her, considering data around genetics, lifestyle factors, biomarkers, and kind of being able to personalize the, if not the treatment plan, then at least personalize kind of the recommendations, educational materials, the level of literacy that we talked about, and adjust also to her level of activation. So there's a lot of kinds of impact that we can achieve here, from personalization to more real-time monitoring There's a lot around the optimization of the management that we can achieve, but also prediction of the treatment efficacy. And with so many different solutions that we can apply during the treatment, do you, Martin, think there's any advice we have around kind of how do they go together and connect into this one journey, as this was a theme that we kind of brought up earlier as well?
Yeah, and I think in this particular case, AI can play two very separate roles here. One, AI can again work as the interface for the patient to make it simpler to use all these kind of things. But secondly, in a completely different role, AI could also act to help to map all these data points and all these inputs together technically. Because one very common problem you have is you have data from many different sources with different meanings. This is why there are these exchange formats, but then you have also maybe local devices people use for measuring the temperature, the blood pressure, any other kind of indicators, and every vendor has different protocols, etc. stuff. AI opens this door a bit more for the technical integration part also, that these talk to each other and they are better correlated. Again, all of this requires strong cybersecurity, and we have seen, unfortunately, a lot of medical devices of lower level, class 1, or even non-medical devices, which are not very strong on the security aspect because they focus on function first. But then after a while realize, you should have taken care of this. From the actual development perspective, again, it's a plain app, a mobile app, a web app. So this doesn't seem to be too complicated, but the data integration, maybe even connection to HCP backend systems, etc., is something which requires a bit of special care. But from the engineering perspective, none of this is new and to the world. All of this has been done in the past successfully for millions of times. So it's more about the experience and do it right rather than a real technical challenge, I would say, from this point of view.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and to be honest, from a design perspective, is similar. Yeah, a lot of the things that we do within the treatment journey, from design perspective, aim at improving adherence and engagement of the patients. And a lot of the times, even though we keep on inventing different ways to use technology, and with the new technologies, we also use different and new design patterns. In total, there's nothing new around the psychological kind of basis of what we're trying to achieve, and the studies behind kind of how to change behaviors, how to set up routines. This is all kind of things that we have been doing for years, just differently applied. And I think, again, from a design perspective, it's really interesting to think about the impact, because as we strive to improve patients' engagement and adherence, we often lack kind of the business side and kind of the data to prove what's going to be impact on business and how do they monetize, basically. And I think one of the studies that I have read recently that really caught my attention and I thought was very interesting was one about patient activation. So patient activation is like a subset of patient engagement that focuses on the knowledge, skill, and confidence a patient has in managing one's own health. Yeah. So the more we know, for example, about our own condition, the more we understand it, the more we feel like we're in charge of our own health, the higher level of activation we would have. So typically we basically can classify people into 4 levels. And a lot of those moments in which and patterns that we do trying to increase patient engagement can increase the patient's activation level, between those 4. And even a single rise between a level can diminish the follow-up cost curve by 8.3%. And again, I find this very impressive because medical cost savings are typically a bit harder to achieve than the administrative cost saving. So point 3, by simply kind of making people feel more in charge, is very kind of a nice achievement, and kind of puts quantified data points on something that typically is a little bit more qualitative and maybe harder to explain or measure.
Yeah, what I feel, Agnieszka, is, and this is my very personal point of view, I don't have any scientific data to back it up, but it seems like that a lot of success or improvement in medical success is based on behavior, right? Do people use the medication the right way? Do they do the exercises they do? Do they go to the treatment, etc.? So it's a behavioral thing. And this is where AI can play a different game now than before, because AI can simulate emotional connection, etc., to people, make it easier for them to change their behavior. Right? If you get a calendar note popping up which says take your drugs, it's annoying, right? Because after a while you just ignore or forget it. AI could do this in different styles, per person, per situation, etc. And so it is a potential option to have another influence on the behavior of people, which then makes the medical success. And that's the interesting twist for me as a, let's say, a very big conclusion. And I would like also to relate to one comment which we have from Tobias Kurz in the LinkedIn chat, saying that even if AI could be the universal library, finding all the diseases in the world, then he might want to challenge whether this is something we really want from privacy perspective, etc. And I would agree. You have to play it right, and you have to play it well. But I see still a benefit. I mean, you look at all the books available, right? All the medical publications, which are hopefully anonymous enough that you do not know which person exactly it was. This type of knowledge is not that critical on the privacy point, from my understanding. But having this available immediately and having it the ability to cross-correlate it to a specific case you have is extremely valuable from my limited understanding of how this medical stuff works. Because it speeds up the search time significantly. I do not think, and here I agree with Tobias, we should put all the actual patient data into this AI of individuals and then try to find it. Because this is also very dangerous, because patient data has not a medical significance or a scientific significance per se. Every person is different. There is still the key need to identify patterns and rules. And only the results of this might go into this AI system. I hope this helps a little bit, Tobias, cleaning up the discussion, but we're happy to follow up on this in more detail if you're still interested. Sure.
And getting a bit away from the topic of population health, we have basically talked about a couple of use cases, and we've seen some data points, but we also seen just a sheer myriad of different solutions. And we see that some of them have quite a lot of market-ready products. Often we talked about the regulatory aspect, we talked about build versus buy aspects. So there's a lot of things that we need to consider when we build solutions like this. Could you maybe, Martin, talk a bit how we approach building for AI and how we approach kind of taking and implementing AI when it comes to specific use cases at STAR?
Yes, happy to do so. I would like to answer one question which just came in before from Andrew Krylov, I guess the name is pronounced hopefully correctly. And the question is, what are our thoughts on cross-provider use of AI health? So if I understand correctly, basically turning it around, saying, this is my AI, knowing me as a patient, having all this information, and then going across multiple clinics. I have to see experts or GPs or whatever. So basically make it patient-centric. Right? At the moment, there's one challenge that your hospital has some information about you, your practitioner has another bit of information, and how could AI bring this all together, right? And how would you deal with the privacy? The privacy topic with AI is still, as always, a critical one, because it seems to be unrealistic for now that every patient has its own very personal AI assistant, where only his data is being treated with. We might get there in the future if running AIs gets cheaper and the actual models get cheaper, but it is still an open pending challenge a little bit. But as I said earlier, AI could technically help to bring this information together, right? Saying, I as a patient authorize an AI to collect data from my hospital, from my GP, from my other HCPs or other examinations, and provide it as a common record, basically make it an EHR, and help me to map all this information together that there's a single understanding of it. This is a massive interoperability activity, and this has been tried to address for many decades. And there's a lot of companies specialized on it. And AI makes this game a little bit easier, but opens also additional risks, which can be dealt with. Again, no worries. It requires just a bit more time to get to that point. I hope this was some kind of helpful answer for you, Andrew. And again, if you're interested in more details, just ping us. We're happy to follow up. Now let's just have very few words, a little bit of marketing. We always have to do a little bit of marketing, right? So what can we do for you? And we have focused on two main areas. One is how work gets done, and the other end is extraordinary user experiences. Today, in our webinar, we have mainly talked about the second case. How do you make the life of users easier? How can you improve the experience? But there's also this aspect of how gets work done, which is the traditional thing of optimizing your internal processes. And some of the topics we talked about today touch this as well. The scheduling agent is one of these. It covers actually both. You have a great experience as a user to book your meeting, but as a clinic, you save time because you don't need humans anymore. It's done by the assistant. So we do both of these fields in terms of applied AI. And generally, there's three main steps, right? So we can help you to jumpstart your innovation, meaning what's your starting point? Where can AI be of help? What could we do? Or if you have already done some first steps, we can help you to accelerate it, do some more experiments and see and validate that it actually is going to work. And then finally, if you're already in the third step, you have already proven that AI is going to work, you want to scale it to a corporate level, to a global level. This is also where we can help. So we can step in any of these three stages, whatever makes the most sense of you. Of course, we like to do all three for you, but we do not insist. And sometimes you can even, you have to jump back or forth a little bit to make it happen. Here, that's not much different than any other classical engineering project, to be honest. Then we offer also three more specific things. For the first one, I would like to bring in Agnieszka again when we talk about design sprint. And I will then cover the last two ones about literacy and management systems. So Agnieszka, what's an AI design sprint? You're muted. Sorry, Agnieszka.
Sorry. It's a short and fast-paced engagement that we do typically with clients that either have a specific problem that they don't know how to solve, or maybe they have an idea, but it's that just this is an idea. They don't know whether it's worth to build it or how to build it. Maybe they want to first kind of prototype it, validate it, and de-risk it before they actually get to development. So it's kind of a very short-paced way of concepting and prototyping a solution, and then validating it as much as we can, or at least kind of making the vision more tangible and ready for validation.
Cool. When it comes to literacy training, it simply means help your company to use AI proficiently. One thing could be to remove some barriers. Are people scared of AI still, right? Because they don't know how it works. They may be afraid of losing their job if they use it properly enough and train it enough. But also what you should do and what you should not do with AI. Where is AI helpful? Where is AI more like a danger or not even applicable? So this is what we do when we talk about literacy training, basically making your mindset a little bit more fit for the use of AI. And the third one, most probably forgotten in most of the companies at the moment, is how do you manage AI properly? You need to have, at least from my point of view, you need to have some rules. They could be very basic, but you need to have some kind of guidance and governance of how to use AI. And the more sophisticated your use gets, the more care you need to take about these things. We've heard that it could be a medical device. Medical devices require a very transparent way of tracking what you're doing and how you do it. And surprise, surprise, we have a solution for this available with our homemade ins-to-out system, which is also specifically tailored to help you govern your AI journey. Being able to be fully compliant on all the regulations and standards you need to follow, whether it's medical, whether it's technical, whether it's European AI regulation. We also help and advise on this because this is an essential part of the journey. If you just give your people access to ChatGPT, you will not gain much value as a company for the second and the third bullet. You need to take care of both of these and ideally do also do the first one. And already now the last slide I'm going to bother you with is a very high level overview of what you could expect from us to do, right? We will build, if you want, AI agents and bots, which covers 90% of the cases we talked about today. We have done this, we enjoy it, and it actually works pretty neat. Besides that, of course, we build also AI-powered apps, and all of this goes on top of AI models. We do not build AI models from scratch. We are not competing with Google or with Meta or with OpenAI. But we know which one is applicable for which case, and we plug them in and make them work. We also work on data processing, making sure that you can optimize the AI models with your specific data. And I think I stressed this point enough, AI safety and regulations. We are certified, qualified, and provide information about to run all of this safely and compliant. And I've seen there's one more question I would like to answer from the chat.
Maybe I'll take this one because it's. Are you talking about the one from Paul?
Yes.
Yeah. So from Paul Zilberman. Surprisingly, doctors are happy with such reliable help as AI. Yet they start being aware that sooner or later many doctors will be replaced. Where is the balance, if at all? And I will, of course, also let you, Martin. I wanted to first kind of provide a bit of a design perspective, simply because it's very much an experience kind of design question, because trust is something that we that is very much at the center of designing for AI. And I think the key here is understanding maybe the concept of a human in the loop, that we typically, what we design for is, at least at this stage, is mostly not really replacing humans and doctors as well, but we need human in the loop for both the act of training the models and tuning, as well as in the moment of kind of cooperation. So right now, a lot of use cases that are HCP facing, they're only automating the simple tasks, and most of them are concerned collaboration. And I really believe this is also the way we kind of will go in the future. But to be absolutely honest, we also cannot fully predict. Like, I think a few years ago, we were talking about, AI will never replace humans because it cannot be as empathetic or like as creative. And now we see AI kind of scoring much higher than doctors on empathy. Exactly. So in reality, I do think that we'll only find out once we are kind of a couple of years further apart. Right now, we're still very far behind, and we have actually the opposite problems of burnouts and shortages of staff rather than the problem of being replaced. I personally believe that it's kind of the matter of our mindset and the direction of kind of keeping the human in the loop for the more complex cases. But I'm also eager to hear what, Martin, you think from your perspective.
Yeah, if I would be able to predict the balance, I would jump out of the school right away and get a billionaire next week. Unfortunately, I'm not. But what I can say from the technical perspective, we have to separate two things. One, what AI is actually doing scientifically, mathematically, from algorithms. And the other perspective is what we perceive what it does. And I think separating this out makes it very clear where the role of the human is. At the moment, any AI system is calculating probabilities. It comes up with what it's the most likely thing to answer on a specific question. And this is statistics. It's pure mathematical thing. There's no magic, and there's nothing which you could even remotely call a reasoning. So the ability to draw conclusions is still a capability of the humans at the moment. And as long as this is the case, we feel the AI is having this ability because it answers in natural language in a very smart way, which we would expect as an answer because of this probability piece. So I would not trust an AI to make a diagnosis on my health statement at the moment, because there are severe risks about hallucination, about wrong correlation, or just pleasing me what I want to hear. I'm playing devil's advocate here a little bit. So the balance I see in the midterm future is that these AI systems speed up the way for the doctors to have a possible conclusion. But then still the doctors have to assess the information and see and check if this conclusion is plausible. Does it make sense? Does it really fit for the patient? So we are talking about an efficiency gain. I do not hope we will replace medical education and medical people like any other jobs completely, but we can augment it in a very clever way. The discussion when AI gets to the point where it can actually draw conclusions and start thinking is a different one. I don't want to open here because we need 2 more hours. It's also a very interesting one. And we can see it also something like the Industrial Revolution when steam machines were invented, electrical energy was invented, computers were invented. The fears of certain professions were all the same like now. The main difference here is the speed has picked up significantly. It's happening so much faster. And it's even more difficult to predict where this is going to end.
Thank you for the question, Paul. And we're pretty much at our last minute, but still, if you still have some questions, you can enter them in the chat. In the meantime, I just wanted to remind you that we would be happy to hear from you also directly, also after the webinar. You're welcome to reach out. You have our emails displayed right now on the screen. So whether you're looking for a design perspective or a technical perspective, feel free to reach out to either of us. And also after this webinar, we will send you a report that will basically have more insights and more data points and more sources to look when it comes to impact of the AI on patient journey, and kind of you will be able to kind of get back to the information that we talked about today, but also get a bit more insight if you're interested in that.
Yes, and feel free to contact us even if you just want to have an open discussion. You don't have to bring $1 million in business just to talk to us. We are quite open and willing to also have general discussions and learnings, and maybe even controversial standpoints about these things, because we believe in the development of this.
Or just having a coffee together, over lunch, if you're interested in the topic, if you want just some inspiration, that's also where we are here for you today. Anna, are you also joining us to kind of close up this occasion?
I know we've been practicing this, but I had a lot of fun and I've heard a lot of new insights. I always love to listen how you talk together from different perspectives, yet so much aligned. Thank you, everyone, for the questions, for the engagement, and we'd love to stay in touch, as Martin and Agnieszka said. Have a good one.
Thanks, everyone. Have an enjoyable rest of your day. Stay safe.